The keys jangled in my hand, a faint metallic clink against the silence of my cramped Los Angeles apartment. As I stepped inside and let the door sigh shut behind me, the air was heavy with the ghost of bleach and pine, scents that clung to my skin like a second shadow, a reminder of the hours I'd spent scrubbing floors and polishing counters. It was past midnight, the city's pulse a distant hum beyond my cracked window, and all I craved was the fleeting mercy of a hot shower. To the world, especially my family, I was Hannah Ree, the eternal housekeeper, chained to a life of toil and invisible struggles. But what they didn't know, what I'd hidden beneath years of calloused hands and quiet nods, was a truth so vast it could shatter their smug certainties. I wasn't just surviving, I was building an empire. My family's voices echoed in my mind as I kicked off my worn sneakers, the linoleum cool against my aching feet. Lisa, my sister, with her syrupy condescension, is always ready to remind me of my place. Mom, her pity wrapped in soft words, as if my life were fragile to be handled with care. Dad, his gruff dismissal cutting deeper than I'd ever admit, labeling me a failure who never escaped the mop. For years, I'd let them paint me as the struggling daughter, the one who'd never rise above paycheck-to-paycheck drudgery. I played the part, kept my head down, and let their assumptions fester, not out of shame, but strategy. Every time I nodded through their pity, I was laying another brick in a foundation they couldn't see. The answering machine blinked in the dim light, a red eye pulsing with judgment. I ignored it, my fingers tracing the edge of a letter tucked beneath a stack of bills, a letter from Forbes, requesting an exclusive feature on the hidden mogul who'd turned cleaning into a billion-dollar enterprise. My enterprise, 5 years ago. At 25, I'd made my first million. A quiet triumph born from sleepless nights and relentless grit. Now, at 30, I owned 4 companies, each a silent giant in the world of luxury home services. Clarity Living, my flagship, was a name whispered among the elite, from Beverly Hills to Manhattan. Yet my family, oblivious, still saw me as the girl who'd never amount to anything. I sank onto the sagging couch, the springs creaking under my weight, and let the truth settle over me like a warm blanket. The Forbes feature would air soon, a revelation poised to upend everything. My family's birthday dinner for Dad was this weekend, a stage for their usual barbs and side-eyes. They'd invited me out of obligation, expecting the same Hannah who'd show up in thrift store clothes, head bowed, but this time, I'd carry a secret heavier than their scorn. I wasn't just their disappointing daughter, I was a force they'd never seen coming. And when the world learned my name, their carefully crafted narrative would crumble. For now, I closed my eyes, the hum of the city lulling me towards sleep, and smiled. The game was about to change, and I was ready to play. 10 years ago, I was 20, a shadow of myself, standing in the wreckage of a life that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. Los Angeles was a city of dreams, but mine had been crushed under the weight of a toxic relationship that left me hollow and broke. I'd dropped out of college, abandoning textbooks and lecture halls to care for my grandmother, the one person who'd ever seen me as more than a sum of my mistakes. She'd raised me in a modest Pasadena home, her laughter filling the gaps where my parents' ambitions left me wanting. When she fell ill, my family, Lisa with her advertising pitches, Marcus with his marketing schemes, Mom and Dad with their respectable lives turned away, too busy climbing their ladders to notice. I didn't hesitate. I moved in, cooked her meals, read her stories, and held her hand through the long nights until she slipped away. Her absence left a void no amount of sunlight could fill. With no degree, no savings, and no one to lean on, I took the only job I could find, cleaning houses. It was meant to be temporary, a way to pay the $800 rent on a shared apartment where the walls were thin and the fridge was always empty. I scrubbed toilets in Bel Air mansions, polished marble in Brentwood, my hands raw and my back screaming by day's end. My family saw it as proof of my failure, a confirmation that I'd never rise above their low expectations. But in that grind, something unexpected happened. I met Evelyn Kane, a silver-haired widow with old money and sharper eyes than anyone I'd ever known. Her sprawling Holmby Hills estate was a maze of papers and clutter. And one day, As I organized her chaotic files in under an hour, she paused her tea and said, "Hannah, you're sharper than half the suits I know. Why are you wasting that mind on floors?" I mumbled something about not having options, but Evelyn wasn't buying it. She handed me a book. The Lean Startup. Its cover worn but promising. "Read this," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Then come back and tell me what you learned." That night, in my dim apartment, I devoured it. The words igniting a spark I hadn't felt since I was a kid dreaming of something bigger. I started waking at 4 a.m., reading business books before my shifts on startups. Strategy, systems, podcasts filled my commutes. Voices of entrepreneurs whispering possibilities as I mopped. Evelyn became my quiet mentor, slipping me more books, asking questions that forced me to think beyond the bucket in my hand. Slowly, an idea took shape, delicate but persistent. What if I built a company that didn't just clean homes, but transformed them into seamless, luxurious ecosystems for the elite? I began to see my cleaning jobs differently, studying the lives of the wealthy, how they outsourced, prioritized, and lived. The spark grew into a plan, one I nurtured in silence, away from my family's doubting eyes. I wasn't ready to share it. Not yet. But as I stood in Evelyn's kitchen, her knowing smile meeting mine, I felt the first stirrings of a future I could claim. The path was unclear, the work daunting, but for the first time, I believed I could build something extraordinary. And that belief, fragile but fierce, was enough to start. The idea for Clarity Living burned in my chest, a quiet flame I shielded from the world, in a shared Los Angeles apartment, where the radiator hissed and the sink always dripped. I poured every spare dollar into my vision. My days began at dawn, cleaning houses across the city, and ended with spreadsheets glowing on a borrowed laptop, mapping a business that would redefine luxury. I lived on instant noodles and thrift store jeans, my bank account a fragile thread, but each sacrifice felt like a step towards something unshakable. By night, I studied contracts, coded a basic website, and sketched workflows for a service that would blend precision cleaning with concierge elegance. Clarity Living wasn't just a company, it was a promise to myself that I could outsmart the odds. 6 weeks after launch, a tech investor in Santa Monica signed on. His sleek home, my first proving ground, his referral brought 4 more clients. Their wealth, a quiet nod to my instincts. I hired a team vetted, trained, discreet, each member a cog in a machine I'd built from scratch. By year 2, we were 12 strong, servicing mansions from Malibu to Pasadena. Year 3 saw us cross state lines, opening an office in Manhattan's Pulse, where skyscrapers cast long shadows over our ambitions. By year 5, Clarity Living's revenue hit $10 million, a number that felt surreal as I balanced it against the $50 in my checking account from a decade ago. Every milestone was a brick in a fortress my family couldn't see. Their voices a distant hum I refused to amplify. At their suburban dinners, I sat quietly, letting their assumptions pile like unwashed dishes. Lisa's tales of ad campaigns sparkled with self-importance. Marcus boasted of his firm's latest deal. I nodded, my thrift store sweater a costume they never questioned, while my mind churned with negotiations for a Chicago expansion. Their pitying glances were almost comical, unaware that my company's logo graced the homes of their city's elite. I kept my secret close, not for fear, but for clarity. Doubt was a distraction I couldn't afford. As I drove home from those dinners, the Los Angeles skyline glittering like a challenge, I knew the truth was coming. The Forbes feature, set to air during Dad's birthday, would be my signal to step out of the shadows. The parking lot of the upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Los Angeles shimmered under amber lights, cars gleaming like trophies. I eased my battered sedan into a space, its dense a stark contrast to the polished SUVs flanking it. The valet's glance flicked over me, dismissive. As I handed him the keys, I smoothed my plain blouse, a deliberate choice, and stepped toward the restaurant's glow, my heart steady but electric. Tonight was Dad's birthday, a ritual of family obligation laced with barbs. But it was also the eve of my unveiling. The Forbes segment loomed, a truth bomb ticking beneath the surface. and I wanted to savor their ignorance one last time before it detonated. Inside, the air was thick with rosemary and wealth, chandeliers casting a soft haze over linen tables. Lisa spotted me first, her voice a chime of practiced warmth. "You made it on time, I'm impressed." Her hug was performative, her perfume sharp. I forced a smile, murmuring a greeting as I slid into my seat. Dad barely glanced up from his menu. His jaw set. "Long day scrubbing floors," he asked. The words a blade wrapped in casualness. I felt the familiar sting, but it didn't pierce like it once did. "Something like that," I replied, my voice even, a spark of amusement flickering within. Mom reached for my hand, her touch tentative. "We're just glad you're here. We know work keeps you occupied." Occupied. A quaint word for overseeing a global operation, but I let it pass, sipping water to hide my smirk. Lisa launched into a monologue about her latest ad pitch, her gestures animated, as if the table were her stage. Marcus chimed in, dropping names of clients I knew from my roster, unaware I'd serviced their penthouses. I listened, my silence a shield, their words a reminder of the gap between us. Then Lisa pulled out her phone, scrolling with a dramatic flourish. "Did you see what's airing tomorrow on Forbes?" A woman, a former housekeeper, built a billion-dollar company. Hannah Rhee, of all names. She laughed, oblivious, as my pulse quickened. Mom blinked, curious. "Hannah Rhee. That's your name." Marcus leaned forward, squinting. "Probably just a coincidence." "Right." Dad snorted, waving a hand. "No chance it's our Hannah. Billionaires don't clean toilets." The table erupted in chuckles. Lisa pointing at me with mock pity, from mop to millions. "Sorry, sis, you're not exactly Forbes material." I swallowed a laugh, the irony a warm pulse in my chest. "You never know," I said softly, my eyes meeting hers. Some people build in silence. The words hung, unnoticed by them, but heavy with intent. The server arrived, plates of gnocchi and veal steaming, and the conversation shifted to Marcus's new condo, Lisa's promotion, their lives a parade of self-congratulation. I ate slowly, each bite a countdown to tomorrow's reckoning. As dessert arrived, tiramisu dusted with cocoa, Lisa tossed another jab. "Next time, bring gloves. My apartment could use a deep clean." Her wink was cruel, but I met it with a smile, enigmatic and sharp. "I'll see you tomorrow," I said, rising, my tone light but laced with promise. They thought I meant brunch. Their Sunday ritual of coffee and complaints, I meant the moment their TVs would flicker with my face. My company's logo blazing across the screen. Outside, the valet returned my car, its engine coughing as I drove into the night. The city stretched before me, a canvas of light and shadow, and I felt the weight of my secret lift. Tomorrow, the world will know me. Tonight, I was still theirs to underestimate, and that was exactly where I wanted to be. Sunday morning broke over Los Angeles like a promise kept, the sun spilling across my penthouse's glass walls, bathing the room in gold. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, a mug of black coffee warming my palms, the city sprawling below like a map of my victories. The Forbes segment was minutes away, its countdown ticking on the TV screen, a digital pulse that matched my own. I'd seen the final cut, polished and precise, but watching it live was different. A moment to witness my family's world tilt. They'd be stirring now, bleary-eyed over coffee in their Pasadena home, flipping on the news, expecting nothing more than the usual drone of headlines. Instead, they'd find me, their overlooked daughter, staring back from the screen. The broadcast began, the anchor's voice cutting through the quiet. Today, a story of reinvention, a woman who turned a mop into a billion-dollar empire, all while keeping it hidden from those closest to her. My face appeared, striding through Clarity Living's Manhattan office, my white blazer sharp against the glass backdrop. The camera lingered on our logo, gold and gleaming. As my voiceover began, they saw a housekeeper. I saw a system to perfect. Clips followed testimonials from CEOs whose homes we'd transformed, my team's crisp uniforms, a montage of our offices in Miami, Chicago, and London, The numbers flashed 300 employees, 6 continents, $3.2 billion valuation. I imagined Dad's mug slipping from his hand, Lisa's smirk freezing, Mom's breath catching like a snagged thread. My phone buzzed. A storm of notifications, texts, voicemails, group chat pings. Mom, is this real? Marcus, you're on Forbes. How Lisa? Why didn't you say anything, Dad? Call me. Now, I let them pile up, unanswered, as I slipped into the driver's seat of my Rolls-Royce Ghost. Its leather cool against my skin. The engine purred as I drove toward Pasadena. The suburbs unfolding in neat rows of lawns and picket fences. I parked outside my parents' house. The car's sleek lines drawing stares from neighbors pruning roses. Mom opened the door before I reached the porch. Her eyes wide. Mascara streaked. It's true, isn't it? She whispered. I held up my phone. The Forbes headline glowing billionaire housekeeper redefines luxury. You tell me, I said, stepping inside. The living room was a time capsule. Same floral curtains. Same creaky armchair where I'd once been lectured on ambition. Dad stood rigid, his arms crossed, searching my face for answers. Lisa and Marcus arrived, breathless, their usual polish fraying. You let us think you were nothing, Lisa said, her voice sharp but trembling. I sat on the couch, its familiar sag grounding me. You assumed I was nothing. I corrected. I never said I was struggling. You filled in the blanks. Dad's jaw tightened. You drove that junk car, wore those cheap clothes. What else were we supposed to think? I leaned forward, my gaze steady, that I didn't need your metrics of success to know mine. The air grew heavy, their silence a concession. I continued, my voice low but firm. When I cared for Grandma, you called it reckless. When I started cleaning, you called it defeat. I built Clarity Living because I saw what you didn't, a need, a system, a chance. I didn't tell you because I needed space to grow. Not your skepticism. Mom's eyes brimmed. But she didn't speak. Marcus shifted, his voice soft. I turned down your pitch. I didn't know it was you. I nodded. I know. That's why it didn't hurt. That evening, I invited them to the Paramount, a downtown venue I'd acquired months ago. Its exclusivity a whisper among the city's elite. The elevator ride was silent, their reflections in the mirrored walls like strangers to themselves. We stepped into a dining room of black marble and city views, a string quartet weaving notes into the air. Servers presented menus embossed with their names, each paired with an envelope. Open them, I said, my voice cutting through the clinking of wine glasses. Lisa revealed a chart her salary dwarfed by my daily passive income, a footnote noting it was just one revenue stream. Marcus held a rejection email from his firm, dismissing my early proposal. Now worth millions. Mom's listed moments she'd dismissed my dreams, paired with a photo of my first office, a cramped space I'd funded alone. Dad's was simplest, a Forbes screenshot. My name in bold. Dad stared at his, then met my eyes. I was wrong, he said, his voice a gravelly admission. I thought I knew you, but I didn't. I held his gaze. You saw a version you could control. I'm not that version. The meal unfolded in quiet. Lobster risotto cooling on plates, their bravado replaced by introspection. Later, I dimmed the lights and played a slideshow my first client's home, my team's first retreat. A grainy photo of me drafting Clarity's logo. The final image showed Grandma's garden, her tulips bright. She saw me. I said, this is for her. The room held its breath, and for the first time, they saw me too. The Paramount dinner lingered like a chord struck soft and true, its echo carrying me through the week that followed. Los Angeles buzzed with my story. Articles ricocheting across the internet, my inbox a flood of invitations, podcasts, keynotes, a memoir deal. Forbes named me among their most influential women, and a global summit booked me to speak. My voice now a currency I'd never imagined. But as I sat on the terrace of my brownstone, tucked in a quiet corner of the city, the clamor felt distant. Ivy curled along the stone walls, a fountain murmured nearby, and my rescue dog, Luna, dozed at my feet, her warmth a reminder of what mattered. Success wasn't the spotlight. It was this stillness, This certainty that I'd built a life on my terms. My phone lit up. A text from Dad cutting through the morning's calm. Watched your speech online. You were powerful. Wish I'd seen it sooner. Proud of you. The words, simple but heavy, stirred something I hadn't expected hope. Not for approval, but for connection. I didn't reply. Not yet. Letting the message settle like dust after a storm. Another notification flashed a Forbes interview. Live in minutes. I slipped inside, trading my sweater for a linen blouse. No pretense or polish. The host's grin filled the screen. Your stories inspired millions. He said, what kept you going when no one believed in you? I paused. The answer clear. Belief doesn't need a crowd. One voice yours can be enough. He pressed on. What would you tell your younger self? Cleaning houses? Feeling unseen. My throat tightened. I'd tell her invisibility is a canvas. Paint on it. Build. And when you're ready, the world will see. The call ended, and I drove to a cemetery on the city's edge, where oaks filtered sunlight into dappled pools. Grandma's headstone stood modest, etched with her name and a single word, beloved. I knelt, brushing dirt from the granite, and placed a bouquet of daisies, her favorite, in the vase. You knew? I whispered, my fingers tracing the stone. From my bag, I pulled a faded notebook, its pages filled with Clarity's first sketches, drawn in stolen moments between shifts. I set it beside the flowers. A quiet offering. We did it. The wind stirred, carrying the scent of earth and memory, and I felt her presence, steady as ever. That evening, I hosted a dinner in my penthouse, not for headlines or deals, but for the handful who'd seen me when I was just a dream. My first employee, now a regional director, toasted to our scrappy beginnings. My college friend, who'd mailed me care packages in lean years, laughed over old stories. Evelyn Kane, frail but radiant, raised her glass, her eyes gleaming with pride. We ate under the city's skyline, the lights a constellation of my journey, and I felt weightless, no need to prove, only to be. Later, my phone buzzed. A group chat message from Mom. Sunday dinner at ours. Just bring yourself. We want to hear about your work. I smiled. The words, a bridge. Fragile, but real. The night stretched on. Luna curled by the window. The city humming below. I thought of the years I'd spent silent. Not out of weakness, but wisdom. Letting my work speak when words wouldn't suffice. The narrative I'd rewritten wasn't just mine, it was a challenge to anyone who'd ever been dismissed. A reminder that triumph doesn't shout. It arrives, quiet and undeniable. As I looked out at the horizon, I knew this wasn't an end, but a beginning. One where I'd walk forward not as a secret, but as a truth too bright to ignore.